Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dive into something really cool, a method for cutting through all that confusing language we see everywhere. This comes from the work of researcher Peter Duke, and we're going to use a pretty interesting debate to show you exactly how you can figure out what's really being said. All right, let's kick things off with this awesome metaphor from Peter Duke himself. It just perfectly sets the stage, right? The point is, you don't have to be an expert on everything inside some complex argument to see where it's weak. Nope, you just need the right tool.
So here's the plan. We'll start with why language can be so confusing, then jump into a case study. We'll look at two totally different ways to critique it, and then, this is the good part, we'll learn a powerful tool for analysis, and finally, show you how to use it.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about a feeling I think we've all had. You're reading something and you just get overwhelmed. It's all these fancy words, this jargon. Our source Peter Duke has a great name for it, EpiWar, or epistemological warfare. It's that feeling of just being bombarded, you know?
And look, this happens to everyone. But here's the thing. Sometimes it's done on purpose. The sources we're looking at call it a technique to create cognitive overload. Basically, it's designed to make you feel like you're not smart enough to even ask a question. And that's a huge barrier to actually understanding anything.
Okay, so to really dig into this, we need a case study. And we've got a great one. It's a proposal from a technologist named Jim Rutt, and we're going to use it to test drive these analytical tools. He calls his idea a minimum viable metaphysics.
So what is this thing? Well, Rutt basically proposes a super simple scaffolding for how we think about reality. He's saying, look, to do science, we don't need some huge, complex philosophy. We just need to agree on three basic things. First, a real universe exists. Second, it started out with some bumps and ripples. It wasn't perfectly smooth. And third, it runs on some kind of regular, consistent laws.
And this is really the key point. He's not trying to build a philosophical palace here, some grand theory of everything. He's just building the scaffolding. Something light, something practical, just enough to get the real work of science done, without getting stuck in 1,000 years of philosophical arguments.
Now you'd think something that simple would be pretty uncontroversial, right? Wrong. Rutt's proposal actually got hit with criticism from two totally different directions. And this is where things get really interesting for us.
So you've got these two very different ways of looking at it. On one hand, you have Courtney Turner, who goes deep into the history and philosophy of these ideas. She argues Rutt is basically hollowing out meaning. Then you have Peter Duke, who takes a completely different approach. He's not looking at the history, he's looking at the language itself, how the sentences are built. And we're going to focus on Duke's method, because honestly, it's a tool that any of us can pick up and use.
And that brings us right to the heart of this explainer, Peter Duke's method. He calls it the meta-model defense. And at its core, it's just a way to look at the structure of any sentence and figure out what information is being left out.
The theory behind it is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Think about it. When we talk, we can't possibly say everything that's in our head, right? It would take forever. So we take shortcuts, we shorten our thoughts. And Duke points out that we do this in three predictable ways. We delete stuff, we distort stuff, or we generalize. The metamodel is basically a decoder ring for spotting those patterns. Okay, let's put this into practice. Let's take one of Rutt's sentences and run it through the metamodel. At first glance, it sounds solid, right? It's concise, it sounds authoritative, it sounds smart. But let's peel back the layers.
So the first pattern Duke points out is something called a nominalization. That's a fancy word, but the idea is simple. It's when you take an action, a verb, and you turn it into a thing, a noun. Words like metaphysics or epistemology here, they sound like solid objects, but they're really just hiding actions. And more importantly, they're hiding who is doing the action.
And bam, this is the method in action. Just by asking these super simple questions, who's doing what, why, we force those hidden actions and actors right back into the open. You can literally see what information was deleted from the original sentence. All of a sudden, a statement that sounded so complete and final is shown for what it is, a container full of unstated assumptions.
Okay, let's do another one. This example uses a totally different pattern, but the goal is the same, to make a really broad claim sound like an undeniable law of nature.
This one's called a universal quantifier. Think of words like all, every, never, or in this case, inevitably. As Duke explains, a word like that acts like a magic wand. It makes a claim sound like an unbreakable law of the universe. It just erases all exceptions, all nuance, and turns a really complex process into a simple, unchangeable fact. And just like before, the magic trick is asking simple questions. Says who? Is that always true? What's the evidence? Instantly you reveal what's missing. You restore the context that was stripped away. And just like that, you turn what was presented as a fact back into what it really is, a claim that needs some serious backup.
All right, so let's pull all this together. How do you turn this into a practical toolkit that you can actually use every day to fight your way through this EpiWar?
Well, this whole method is basically a shield against what Duke calls bafflegab. And that's just the perfect word for it, isn't it? It's all that specialized jargon used to make you feel dumb, to make you think you have no right to question the experts. It's a power move, designed to make you just nod along and accept it.
So here it is, your linguistic toolkit. This is the stuff you want to look out for. First, those nouns that are secretly hiding actions. Ask, who is doing it? Second, those universal words like always or inevitably. Ask, really? Are there any exceptions? Third, commands like you must or it's necessary. Ask according to whom? And finally, just watch for sentences where you can't tell who's doing anything. Ask who specifically. Keep these questions in your back pocket.
And the best part, you don't have to be a philosopher or a systems theorist to use this stuff, not at all. All it takes is building one simple habit, the habit of asking these questions. It's about restoring what was removed. You're just making the hidden parts of the language visible again for everyone to see.
And trust me, once you start seeing these patterns, you'll see them everywhere. News articles, emails from your boss, corporate mission statements, political speeches, it's all over the place. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on. What might you discover if you start asking these simple questions about all the language you come across every single day?